"I only stayed because of you," said Martin from Vanguard Industries right after his third bourbon. He was tearing up again. This time, it was because their new CTO had botched another server migration, and I'd spent the last 96 hours keeping their entire operation from collapsing into a pile of lawsuits and angry board members. I nodded, patted his shoulder, and slid the contract renewal across the table. He signed it with a thumbprint and a half-eaten steak. That was a Thursday. Name's Christopher Patterson, by the way. Chris to my friends. 49 years old, former Marine Staff Sergeant, and until recently, Senior Enterprise Solutions Director at Apex Enterprise Solutions here in Dallas. Been carrying that company on my back for 14 years, ever since I traded my dress blues for a business suit. See, when you're the guy who remembers their daughter's wedding date, their quarterly board presentations, and the name of their rescue dog Max, you get more than performance reviews and Slack notifications. You get trust. Deep, unshakable trust. The kind that makes a Fortune 500 CEO text you at 2 a.m. on Sunday because their entire logistics system crashed and their board meeting is Monday morning. And I always answered. Didn't matter if it was Christmas or my wedding anniversary. When the tech failed, when the project manager disappeared, when some executive promised the impossible and left everyone else to deliver it, they called me. I didn't track overtime, didn't ask for recognition, because in enterprise software, keeping a client happy is worth more than any bonus they could cut you. That's how I learned the real business, not from PowerPoints or quarterly reports, but from 3 a.m. phone calls and airport meetings, and the kind of trust you earn one crisis at a time. Take Patricia from Industrial Systems Group. 3 years ago, their entire warehouse automation system died during Black Friday weekend. Their competitors were circling like vultures, ready to poach their biggest retail clients. I flew to Memphis that night, spent 72 hours sleeping on a cot in their server room, and personally rebuilt their entire network from backup systems. By Monday morning, they were not only operational, they were running better than before the crash. Patricia never forgot that. Neither did her board of directors, who voted to triple their contract with us the following quarter. That's $23 million in recurring revenue from one weekend of giving a damn when everyone else was checking out. Or take Gerald from Metro Logistics. His son was getting married on the same weekend we were supposed to launch their new fleet management system. Company policy said no major deployments during family events, but Gerald was panicking because his competitors were already stealing market share. I could have followed policy and let him twist. Instead, I coordinated the entire rollout from the wedding reception, running the deployment from my phone while his son danced with his bride. The system went live without a hitch, and Gerald saved face with both his family and his board. That's how you build loyalty. Not through contract terms or service agreements, but through understanding that business is personal even when people pretend it isn't. My Marine drill instructor used to say the same thing. Take care of your people, and they'll take care of you. Everything else is just paperwork. The new leadership at Apex didn't understand that. They thought client relationships meant LinkedIn connections and automated email campaigns. They looked at what I did and saw inefficiency, not results. I was something they couldn't put in a spreadsheet, so they started treating me like a problem they needed to solve. Let me back up. 14 years I'd been at Apex. Started as an account coordinator fresh out of the Marines, made senior director after saving that $85 million contract in my third year by flying to Houston on my own dime and personally managing a warehouse automation rollout that had gone so sideways it made Hurricane Katrina look organized. I earned my spot through results, not politics. My wife Sarah used to joke that I cared more about my clients than my own family. She wasn't entirely wrong. When you're responsible for keeping entire companies operational, when hundreds of jobs depend on the systems you manage, when board members are breathing down CEOs' necks about quarterly numbers, you don't get to clock out at 5 p.m. and forget about work. This wasn't just my career, it was my calling. I was good at it, and people depended on me being good at it. But things changed about 18 months ago. Our CEO sold a 60% stake to Pacific Tech Solutions, one of those Silicon Valley outfits that thinks every problem can be solved with an algorithm and a 23-year-old with a computer science degree. The old guard started retiring or getting pushed out. In came the new breed. Austin Webb was their golden boy. 31 years old, Stanford MBA, talked like he invented business. Austin loved metrics, dashboards, and disruption. But mostly Austin loved Austin. He called me Chief, like we were buddies. I told him my name was Chris. He said Chief was more efficient. I said it was disrespectful. HR scheduled a culture fit evaluation. That should have been my first warning. In 14 years, I'd never had a culture fit evaluation. I'd saved the company millions, built relationships that competitors couldn't break, mentored dozens of junior reps who were now running their own territories. But apparently, none of that mattered if you didn't fit Austin Webb's vision of scalable human capital. Austin's first big move was something he called scalable client engagement protocols. Translation: replace experienced reps with junior staff and automated systems so he could brag about cost optimization in his quarterly reports. I watched account satisfaction scores drop like a stone. Clients started calling me directly, asking what the hell was happening. The breaking point came during a client review meeting with Hartman Manufacturing. They had been with us for 8 years, $18 million annual contract, never a single complaint. Austin had assigned one of his new hires, a kid named Brandon, who looked like he'd just graduated high school, to take over their account. Brandon showed up to their quarterly business review with a PowerPoint full of industry buzzwords and zero understanding of their actual operations. 20 minutes into his presentation about leveraging synergistic solutions for optimal operational efficiency, Hartman's CEO stopped him mid-sentence. "Son," he said, his Texas drawl thick with irritation, "I've been running manufacturing operations since before you were born. I don't need synergy. I need my production lines working 24/7 without glitches. Where's Chris?" Brandon fumbled through his notes. "Mr. Patterson is transitioning to more strategic oversight roles. I'll be your primary point of contact moving forward." The room went dead quiet. Hartman's CEO looked at me, then at Austin, then back at Brandon. "No," he said simply, "that's not going to work." After the meeting, Austin pulled me aside. His face was red, and he had that look people get when their perfect plan hits reality. "Chief," he said, "we need to discuss boundaries. You're undermining the new team structure." "I'm keeping our biggest client happy," I replied. "That used to be called doing my job." "Your job is whatever I define it to be," he snapped, dropping the fake buddy routine. "We're building scalable systems here. You can't be the hero in every client story." That's when I realized we weren't just having a business disagreement. This was personal for Austin. He saw my relationships with clients as a threat to his authority. In his mind, if clients preferred dealing with me over his new systems, it proved his whole strategy was wrong. And Austin Webb couldn't be wrong. The micromanagement started immediately. Every client call had to be pre-approved. My expense reports got flagged for review. I was required to submit daily summaries of my activities to ensure alignment with company objectives. They installed monitoring software on my computer to track how I spent my time. But the real gut punch came when they reassigned my top accounts to junior reps without consulting me. I found out when Martin from Vanguard called me, confused and frustrated. "Chris," he said, "some kid called me yesterday saying he's taking over our relationship." I told him that wasn't happening. "What's going on over there?" I couldn't tell him the truth, not yet. "Corporate politics is a dirty game, Martin. Don't worry about it. I'm still here." But for how long? The writing was on the wall. Austin was systematically dismantling everything I'd built, piece by piece. And every time a client complained or a deal went sideways because of his new people, he blamed it on their dependence on legacy relationships. That's when I called my niece Rebecca. She's a contracts lawyer down in Houston, handles corporate agreements for some big firms. Sharp as a tack, inherited the family stubborn streak that served her well in courtrooms. "Uncle Chris," she said, after I explained the situation, "sounds like you need some insurance." "What kind of insurance?" "The kind that makes sure if they push you out, you don't go empty-handed. Ever heard of client retention clauses?" She explained it over dinner the next weekend. Succession insurance, she called it. A contractual provision that protects both the client and the relationship manager if key personnel are removed. Not illegal, not even unusual in consulting and professional services, but rare in enterprise software because most companies assume they own the relationship. The beauty of it was the language. Clean, professional, bulletproof. In the event that Christopher Patterson is no longer directly managing this account, the client reserves the right to initiate contract review or termination without penalty. Rebecca handled the legal framework, but I had to sell it to the clients, and that meant being honest about what was happening at Apex. The first conversation was with Patricia from Industrial Systems Group. We were at our usual quarterly lunch spot when I brought it up. Patricia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to keep it between us for now. If something happened to me, if I wasn't managing your account anymore, how would you feel about that? She set down her fork and looked at me hard. Are they pushing you out? I can't say for certain, but I want to make sure you're protected if they are. Her answer was immediate. Chris, you saved our company. Twice. If they're stupid enough to get rid of you, we need options. One by one, I had the same conversation with my key clients. Not as threats or ultimatums, just as contingency planning. The response was always the same. Loyalty to me, not to Apex. Martin from Vanguard put it best. We don't pay you for software, Chris. We pay you for peace of mind. If you're not there to answer the phone at 2 a.m. when everything goes to hell, what exactly are we buying? By December, I had 15 signed agreements. By January, it was 20. Major accounts, long-term contracts, the clients who actually mattered. Rebecca handled all the paperwork through her firm, nothing traceable to Apex Systems. What surprised me wasn't how quickly they agreed. It was how relieved they seemed to have the option. These weren't just business relationships anymore. They were partnerships built on trust that had nothing to do with corporate hierarchies or efficiency metrics. Austin Webb was about to learn that trust, once earned, doesn't transfer with an org chart change. The axe fell on a Tuesday in January. Tuesdays are always execution day in corporate America. Far enough from the weekend to avoid gossip, close enough to Friday that people forget by happy hour. Austin had it down to a science. I was reviewing client satisfaction surveys, ironically enough, when my computer pinged. Slack. Message from Patricia in HR. Hey Chris, can you swing by conference room C for a quick sync? The smiley face emoji was a nice touch, like a hitman sending flowers. I didn't respond. I already knew what was coming. The warning had come from Tommy Walsh, another former Marine who worked in IT. He'd seen the email threads, the budget reallocations, the new org chart where my name was conspicuously absent. Tommy had pulled me aside the week before, voice low, like we were back in Fallujah. They're planning something, brother. Austin's been meeting with legal, asking about termination procedures. Watch your six. I closed my laptop, grabbed my phone, and left my coffee on the desk. The walk down that hallway felt like the longest 50 yards of my life. 14 years of history in that building. Photos on the wall of company retreats where I was still smiling. Awards I'd won for client retention. The conference room where I'd closed my first major deal. When I walked into conference room C, it was staged like a bad corporate drama. Patricia from HR sat on one side of the table, tablet ready, expression carefully neutral. Austin leaned against the wall like he was posing for a magazine cover, trying to look casual but failing to hide his anticipation. The blinds were closed. Thanks for coming in, Chris, Patricia started. Her voice was so gentle I almost laughed. We're here to inform you that, effective immediately, your employment with Apex Enterprise Solutions is being terminated. No build-up, no context, just the blade. I stayed standing. No point sitting for my own funeral. In that moment, all I could think about was my dad, who'd worked 30 years at the same factory before they shipped his job to Mexico. He'd come home that day looking like someone had died. Told my mom over dinner, hands shaking, that loyalty was a one-way street in corporate America. This decision follows our recent organizational restructuring, Patricia continued, reading from her script. Your role has been eliminated as part of our efficiency optimization initiative. I let that sink in. Efficiency optimization. 14 years of building relationships, solving problems, keeping clients happy when any other company would have lost them. All of it reduced to an inefficiency that needed optimizing. Austin finally spoke up, unable to contain himself any longer. It's nothing personal, Chief, just business evolution. I looked at him for a long moment. This kid who'd never spent a sleepless night worried about a client's operations, who'd never had to explain to a CEO why their million-dollar system was down and what he was going to do about it, who thought business was about metrics and algorithms instead of the human beings behind every contract. You're right, Austin, I said, keeping my voice level. It is just business. Patricia slid the paperwork across the table. Severance package, transition documents, non-disclosure agreement. standard corporate burial kit. She was trying to be professional, but I could see the discomfort in her eyes. She knew this was wrong. Before you ask, she added, you're not required to sign anything today. You have 7 business days to review. I picked up the envelope, tapped it against my palm once, then set it back down. My hands were steadier than I expected. All those years in the Marines had taught me how to stay calm when everything was falling apart. Strongest relationships I've ever built in this industry, I said, looking Austin in the eye, and you just handed them back to me. His smirk flickered for just a second. That's when I knew he had no idea what was coming. He thought he was firing an expensive employee. He had no clue he was cutting the only thread holding half their revenue in place. Is there anything else you need from me? I asked. We'll handle the transition, Austin said. Your accounts have already been reassigned. Of course they had. Probably to Brandon and the other fresh-faced kids who thought client management meant sending automated check-in emails. I didn't throw my badge or storm out. That's not who I am. I slid my access card across the table like a poker chip I no longer needed, walked past 3 coworkers in the hallway, none of whom would look me in the eye, and out the glass doors of a company I'd carried for 14 years. The Texas sun was bright, the January air crisp and clean. I got in my truck, sat for a minute, and felt something I hadn't expected: relief. For the first time in 18 months, I didn't have to pretend to respect Austin Webb. I didn't have to smile through another meeting about scalable engagement protocols. I didn't have to watch incompetent kids destroy relationships I'd spent years building. I pulled out my personal phone. There were already 5 messages waiting. We heard, we're ready. Just say when. The news had traveled fast. In an industry where everyone knows everyone, word of my termination had reached my clients before I'd even gotten to my truck. That told me everything I needed to know about where their real loyalty lay. I typed back one line: contact Rebecca Patterson at Houston Corporate Law, reference our December agreement. Then I drove home. Sarah was in the kitchen when I walked in, still in my suit but carrying a cardboard box with my personal items. She took one look at my face and knew. They actually did it, she said. It wasn't a question. Yep. But Sarah, I need you to know something. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a beer and my laptop. Secure connection, nothing traceable. At 7:30 p.m., I sent a simple text to Rebecca. It's time. Within minutes, the first email hit Apex's legal department. Subject: contract suspension per retention clause. Immediate attention required. It was from Vanguard Industries' legal team. Professional, firm, devastating. Per executed agreement dated December 14th, 2024, we are formally notifying Apex Enterprise Solutions of our intent to suspend all current contracts and deliverables. Our partnership was contingent upon direct engagement with Christopher Patterson. In his absence, we are exercising our right to terminate without penalty. That was the first domino. At 7:45, the second one fell. Industrial Systems Group, then Metro Logistics, then Hartman Manufacturing. By 9 p.m., my phone was buzzing non-stop with confirmation emails from Rebecca's firm. Each one a perfectly crafted legal missile aimed at Apex's quarterly projections. Within 3 hours, $295 million in contracts had just walked out of Apex's revenue forecast. The emails weren't angry or emotional. They were matter-of-fact, businesslike, devastating in their simplicity. Each one referenced the specific retention clause, cited the termination of my employment as a material change in service delivery, and politely exercised their right to immediate contract review. At 9:30, Austin called my personal cell. I let it ring. The irony was perfect. For 14 years, I had answered every call from every client, no matter what time, no matter what I was doing. Now the person who'd fired me for being too available was calling my personal phone, desperate for contact. He called again, then again. Finally a text. We need to talk. Please call back. Urgent. I finished my beer, watched the Dallas skyline light up against the night sky, and typed back, your org chart says I don't work there anymore. Take it up with legal. By 10 p.m., Rebecca texted me a screenshot. Emergency board meeting scheduled for 6 a.m. Subject line, client retention crisis, revenue impact assessment. Another text followed. Your former boss tried calling our firm 6 times. We sent him to voicemail. Wednesday morning, while Austin was probably explaining to a room full of furious board members how nearly half their annual revenue had just evaporated overnight, I was sitting in my kitchen making pancakes for Sarah and reading job offers that had started rolling in around midnight. But they weren't job offers. They were partnership proposals. "Christopher, I want to discuss establishing a direct consulting relationship with you, personally," wrote the CEO of Hartman Manufacturing. "Our board has authorized me to offer you a 3-year contract at twice your previous compensation. We're done dealing with intermediaries." Similar messages from 8 other clients, all offering multi-year deals, all willing to pay premium rates for what they'd been getting from Apex at wholesale prices. They didn't just want to leave Apex, they wanted to follow me. By noon, Rebecca had filed the paperwork for Patterson Strategic Consulting LLC. By 2 p.m., I had 6 signed clients and a business plan that projected $450,000 in first-year revenue, more than I'd ever made as someone else's employee. But the real satisfaction came that afternoon when Tommy Walsh called me. "Brother," he said, his voice full of barely contained laughter, "you should see this place. It's like someone set off a bomb. Austin's been in meetings all day. Half the sales team is updating their resumes. And get this, the CEO just announced they're suspending the modernization initiative pending a strategic review of client relationship management. Translation: Austin Webb's scalable engagement protocols were dead in the water, killed by the very inefficiency he'd tried to eliminate. The official news came Thursday morning. Austin Webb was no longer with the company, effective immediately. The press release talked about strategic differences and pursuing new opportunities, but everyone in the industry knew what it meant. He'd been fired, just like me. The difference was, when they fired Austin, nobody followed him out the door. Patricia from HR lasted another week before being reassigned to special projects, which everyone knows is corporate purgatory. The new leadership team brought in crisis management consultants to figure out how a modernization initiative had turned into a client exodus. By Friday, the story was making rounds in industry publications. Major enterprise clients abandoning established vendor relationships to follow a single account manager wasn't unprecedented, but doing it on this scale was. I started getting calls from reporters, headhunters, even competitors wanting to understand how I'd pulled it off. The answer was simple, but nobody wanted to hear it. There was no trick, no secret strategy, no innovative disruption. I'd just done what my drill sergeant taught me 25 years ago in basic training. Take care of your people, and they'll take care of you. 6 months later, I'm writing this from my home office overlooking White Rock Lake. Patterson Strategic Consulting has 15 employees, all of them people who understood that business is personal, whether the MBA textbooks admit it or not. We don't have automated engagement protocols or scalable client interfaces. We have relationships. Martin from Vanguard is still my client. So is Patricia from Industrial Systems Group. So is Gerald from Metro Logistics. The difference is, now when they call me at 2 a.m. because something's broken, they're calling the owner of the company, not some employee who might get fired for caring too much. Last month, I got a LinkedIn message from a young account manager at a tech startup. He'd heard about what happened at Apex and wanted advice on building client relationships in an increasingly automated industry. I told him what I wish someone had told me when I was starting out. Remember that behind every contract is a human being whose success depends on your work. Treat their problems like your problems. Answer their calls. Show up when things go wrong. And never ever let some executive who's never carried a quota tell you that caring about your clients is inefficient. Because here's what Austin Webb and his efficiency optimization never understood. Loyalty isn't a weakness or outdated thinking. It's not something you can automate or scale or disrupt. It's earned through 2 a.m. phone calls and airport meetings and treating people like they matter, even when the spreadsheets say it's not cost-effective. The new generation of business leaders thinks everything can be disrupted, including the basic human need to trust the people you work with. They're wrong. And if you're patient enough and smart enough, sometimes you can prove it in ways they'll remember for a long time. These days, when I drive past the Apex building, I think about that Tuesday in Conference Room C. How they thought they were firing an expensive employee and ended up dismantling their own company, one loyal client at a time.